Sweet. Here we go.
And here we are. We're about to have a dead reckoning talking about. Is this
Like the
Sounds like a
map.
euphemism for whatever this three-way men thing is.
Whoa.
Ah,
Okay. We're off to
Dead
a great
Reckoning.
start.
Yep.
No, so Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 1. Is this the movie title with the most colons in it? I feel like it might
No,
be.
that's Human Centipede 3 with the most colons in it.
Oh,
Oh.
that is a good one. That's very
Yeah,
good,
yeah.
Don. I have to hand that one to you, friend.
Yeah, just keep your fist to yourself on that one, okay? But
Hey, I am proud of that. By the way, Human Centipede 3 was terrible. Part 2 is a masterpiece.
okay.
All black and white except for one scene involving lots of brown.
Actually,
Anyhow,
and it's because it's almost meta. It's a guy watching the movie and then wanting to do himself. You're right.
seriously.
Yeah.
Okay, but we're not
Clever.
talking about the Human Centipede tonight.
Hopefully
Or
not.
colon.
We're talking about the new
Thanks,
Mission
John.
Impossible.
Yep.
MI7. And who am I talking about it with? I'm Ian Simmons of Kicking the Seat. We have Jeff York of The Establishing Shot and Don Shanahan of Film Obsessive, Cinephile Hissy Fit Podcast. Every movie has a lesson. And, it's a shorter show tonight, so I'm not going to go through all of your, bona fides. But we are going to talk about Mission Impossible 7. And I just want to start off by saying, well, it's a bit weird because right now the zeitgeist is all about Barbenheimer, and we will talk about those movies in due time. But I think there's a little blockbuster that could use some love at the box office this weekend. Is everyone watching the world blow up or watching Barbie come to life? Give Tom Cruise some attention. This was the #1 movie last week, and I think deservedly so. I caught it yesterday. Full disclosure, I'm a big fan of the Mission Impossible series, except for Mission Impossible Fallout, the last film from 2018.
I want to hear about this. Yeah. Litigate that out for a minute.
Wow.
Listen,
Interesting.
And it's I will admit it is mostly my fault because these movies have always been kind of like Friends episodes to me. It's like, Friends is always like, instead of episode descriptions, the title is always, it's the one with. So the first one is Mission Impossible. The second one is the bad one. The third one is the one with Philip Seymour Hoffman. The fourth is the one with the giant building. And I think the fifth was the plane, the big centerpiece stunt. It's always that one. Fallout, and because of that reason, I never really picked up on a lot of the connective tissues. These are not in-depth, novels of films where you have to remember characters and plot points, except for this sort of middle trilogy of 4, 5, and 6. And I did not carry over much of any memory of 5 to 6. So I was completely confused during most of that movie. I'm like, who is this? What? Who killed what? Why is this important? And it was too late to do any kind of homework while I'm sitting there in the multiplex. And there is evidence of my dislike of this film that was completely destroyed by the internet. I recorded an entire review of that movie with David Fowley, and it was one of the more fun conversations we've had, but the recording was completely eaten.
Oh, man.
And I still don't remember it. So I was glad to see that Dead Reckoning Part 1 it's a fresh start. I mean, you do have carryover characters from the rest of the series and a couple of references to things that have happened in previous movies, but you don't need to know any of that. It's, Tom Cruise is a super spy. He's got his team of tech wizards and sort of an unwilling new recruit, and they're trying to stop a malicious AI. Now, before we get any further into it than that, I'm going to turn on the spoiler banner because I feel like even that could be a spoiler.
True.
So, gentlemen, because I don't think we've talked about Mission Impossible yet, let's just start off with some high level feelings on the series. Don, what do you make of Mission Impossible as a franchise? Not the TV show, but the movies specifically.
Sure. No, I'm a big fan of the movie series because I'm that age where Tom Cruise is the coolest person in the whole wide world, at least to a kid who was, a preteen in the 80s and a formative person in the 90s. So I enjoy every iteration of the series, even when it was doing the whole let's take a different director and throw the character to the wall and see what sticks. Like, I don't mind the John Woo second one bit. I adore to pieces Philip Seymour Hoffman in the third one. I think it's the best one in the series because it just kind of cuts a little harder and a little deeper with the best villain they've ever had. And then, J.J. Abrams just brings a flair that was the right balance between the mystery fun of De Palma and then, of course, the wackiness that you can do with that action. Now they've upped the stakes and jumped as a series from there, where they get a little. They're starting to kind of get, kind of lean over the skis a little bit. Like there's that whole like 15-minute stretch of Rogue Nation where he like drowns, gets defibrillated, crashes a car and crashes a motorcycle with not a fucking scratch on him in like 15 minutes, where I'm like, come on, like at least make him woozy or a concussion or lay him up for 2 weeks or something. But for the most part, these are thanks to Tom Cruise and his producing power and likely, devil may care hubris. He's out here making well-paced, fantastic Hollywood entertainment adventures that has a little CGI but nothing crazy. And I think he's done a very, very good job of like pacing them in terms of like a career where there's always 3 or 4 years between these movies where they never overstay their welcome. They're not piled on top of each other, other than that trilogy you mentioned that you can kind of just jump into any movie and be okay. Little history here, little history there, they'll hold your hand. And the guy just makes some of the best action filmmaking we've got, and they're always exciting. I always want to see what he does next, and this movie is right in that chain. I feel like there's a part of this series where, you just want to know the series, not this movie. So I'll stop there and pass it to the room here. But as a series, big fan.
Cool. Well, before we get to Jeff, I do want to acknowledge David Fowley, Keeping It Real, has joined us. Welcome. I was regaling the guys a few minutes ago about our conversation about Fallout from a few years ago, the movie that I hated for reasons that were mostly my own, but that episode never came out because the internet ate it. It could have been in proto AI, who knows?
Was that just you and me talking about it?
Yeah, it was just us. Okay. Yeah, it was crazy.
I think I remember that.
Yeah. Jeff, so overall thoughts on Mission Impossible as a film franchise?
Well, it's funny. My next article for pipelineartist.com, the arts magazine online, is about the franchise. And I'm going to go on the record, a little bit of a limb perhaps. I think it is the most satisfying franchise in film history for something that's gone beyond 3. And even though number 2 gets kind of trashed a little bit, watch it again. It's a very good movie. Mm-hmm. It's not as good as these others, but compared to most other stuff, whether it's, tell me one in the Fast and Furious 10 that have been done that's really memorable. And John Woo is a pretty memorable director. But since McQuarrie's taken over, I think it's gone into this whole other kind of world. But I just want to say before I get into the franchise, I think one of the things I love about the franchise is they've built very well on a lot of the tenets that the television show did. The television show, which was mostly in the late 60s, was primarily a visual television show before almost anything else on television was ever purely visual. Now, more and more shows are becoming like that, and yet most television you can watch almost as radio. You can go and do your homework or multitask doing the laundry and listen to the show, and you're getting it because the dialogue carries along. There's some great dialogue in the show. There's some great dialogue here, but it's such a visual story. I mean, to me, when Tom Cruise did maybe the most famous single piece in the film franchise of hanging from those wires trying to get the knock list, and that was virtually a silent segment for some 20 minutes, and you're riveted, and it's funny, it's tense, it's scary. They have a couple of, oh my God, is that guy going to hope he's got to go back to the bathroom? Those kind of things. It's genius. And De Palma loves doing stuff without dialogue anyway, so he was a great guy to kind of start off. And what I think they've maintained from there all the way through here is they do these sort of impossible things, but they're played fairly real. There's not a lot of CGI. It's mostly in camera. They're very witty. They're clever. I think they've thought out things very well. Like, I mean, for example, in this one, and we're going to get to early spoiler here, but, the big thing they've been touting for months now is Tom Cruise's jump off that edge, and it's fantastic. And apparently he did it 6 goddamn times, so it's kind of incredible. But I tell you what, that's nothing compared to what happens after that with the Orient Express. And that just goes on, and yet it's hilarious. It's never boring. It's scary and tense every second of it, but it's also incredible fun, and they make it real because they shot that with some real physical cars, as opposed to everything is against green screen. And I know that was one of the complaints about Indiana Jones is
we'll talk about that movie.
But I just think this film does this marvelous job of creating a spy world, which does have its stakes, playing it real, at least real enough. And by Tom Cruise doing all those stunts on his own, it's like, yep, that's him doing it. And maybe Ethan's that crazy guy too. And yet there's a sense of fun to it. I just want to say one quick thing here, and then I'll let David come in. But they have this extended car chase through the streets of Rome, and they end up getting into this little pissy yellow Fiat, and it's still exciting as hell. And even though they're clunking downstairs and, all this kind of stuff, it's like, and they're in that car, and the camera mount is on that, and Cruise is driving a great deal of that, and it's played real. I didn't catch a single CGI shot. Now, maybe if I go back and see it a second time, I will, but they just have fun with it. They're serious in the intensity of it, but they know that they're having a little fun with it too. So, they know how to straddle that line. It's just, to me, second for second, pound for pound, exciting. You look forward to them, all the reasons Don said. And 7 films in, they're getting better. What franchise can say 7 films in, they're better than they were at 1 and 2 in so many demonstrable ways? I can't think of any. And they play up Tom Cruise's age. They play up the camaraderie and the age and the worry of people. They kill off key characters, which a lot of these franchises are always timid to do. I think they're doing it all pretty well right.
Yeah, I agree. And one thing I want to talk about that car, the little spy car, because they have to ditch the one that they're in. Right. Tom Cruise has
the BMW.
It's
talk about a downgrade.
Well,
I guess they were out of the good ones that hurts. Damn it.
Well, I think it ended up being the kind of the genius car that they needed, because they had all these slick automobiles in a line, and this little Fiat comes out, turns out is great for driving through these narrow corridors and things that. It's more maneuverable. But I like that there's the spy movie car panel that pops out.
Yes,
there's an array of buttons and a dial, but there's no labels on it. And usually they get into these cars like, oh, you press that one for the rockets. And this, they have no idea what they're looking at, so they're just pressing buttons trying to figure it out. It's very funny and very exciting, as you mentioned. But so, David, what did you make, or what do you make of these movies, kind of overall? Like, quick thoughts.
I was just sitting here thinking how this is. I mean, I agree with Jeff. I mean, I don't know about of cinema history, but as far as this genre, I mean, it is probably the best thing out there as far as spy thrillers. I would rather watch a Mission Impossible movie than any, say, like Pierce Brosnan and James Bond or something. I mean, there's really only one good Pierce Brosnan James Bond, maybe 2, but that's the thing is like GoldenEye, Tomorrow Never Dies. That's it.
Yeah.
I mean, these are highly rewatchable, and I would give John Woo's another chance. But I was just sitting here thinking, like, this is probably the longest running franchise of my adulthood. I can't think of I mean, obviously James Bond's been going on before me, right? But I don't even consider James Bond a franchise. I mean, do you consider a film franchise something that continues the story? The way I see it,
I know what you're saying, David. I do.
Yeah.
I think and that's the longest one. But the reason I would say Mission Impossible is better is you said it there yourself. There are some dogs in that bunch. Even if number 2 in Mission Impossible isn't as good as the others, it's not like some of the. It's not like Die Another Day. Not that. What was the
Diamonds Are Forever?
The one? No. Well, that was a good. The last Pierce Brosnan one with the invisible car.
Die Another Day.
Die Another Day.
Oh my God! It's just
great Madonna song.
Please.
So I guess what I think is, and this is just something that I'm spitballing here and coming up with, is like maybe Bond could be considered a series, whereas a franchise to me is like something where the actors stay the same. You don't get interchangeable. Like you could have a Batman series because those actors are always different. Superman,
even Star Wars.
Well, technically, it's a little bit backwards there. A series is something that is carried on with the original creators through and through. A franchise, much like you think of like a fast food franchise, that's something that was started by one person and carried on by other people.
Yeah.
And you're trying to like franchising a building, like a million people own different McDonald's.
I would swap those two.
And see, Ian, I'm with you, and not trying to put a frame on your qualifying it, David, but James Bond since 1962, Harry Potter since 1992, John Wick 4 movies in, those kind of things, or whatever the Harry Potter was done. I don't remember the exact year. I don't think it was 92. It was
2001.
2000. Oh, really? A decade off. Sorry. Anyway, but you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Well, yeah,
series,
and
yeah.
this series, is Dead Reckoning. I know I'm jumping ahead, but we've got a little
Mm-hmm.
kind of limited time tonight. But is Dead Reckoning Part 2? Is that in the can? Is that being
Yeah.
edited?
Well,
Because everything that's going on right now in Hollywood, I thought the sequel is supposed to come out next year.
Yes.
But I don't know, because I'm thinking like if they can hold out. I mean, not that they would want to, but this series is almost 20 years old. I think
More than
96, right?
almost
that's
30 years old.
and it's not going to end with part 2.
Oh my gosh, I can't do math.
There
Wow,
was a
30.
there was
Yeah.
a time when
27.
there was a time during Ghost Protocol that there was talk about Cruise handing it over to Renner.
Yeah.
Remember?
Right.
And he's
That's
like,
right.
And Cruise is like, no way, man.
Let me hit off a building and show you I still got the stuff.
Yeah. Oh gosh.
I
But
had completely forgotten about that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I just think it was funny because
That's two franchises Renner got yanked right out from right there. Like yep.
that and Bourne. Yeah.
you know, although I mean, I know we just talked about how, you know, recently how Ford within the past decade has kind of come back with all these like legendary iconic roles, right? The three of them. And now we have Maverick, we have Ethan Hunt that continues to go and go and run and run and run. But I don't know what Cruise would do without these movies.
Color of Money 2.
No,
where he's Newman now.
Because we're never gonna. Are we ever gonna see like say Magnolia, a Rain Man, a you know Born on the 4th of July or something? You know,
like will he go back to
just
like dramatic filmmaking?
Not IP stuff, I guess is what I'm saying.
I think there's a chance. I think there's a point where he gets the Grecian formula out, accepts his age, and he turns into Paul Newman. That he starts doing really. I think he's going to surprise us. He's got eclectic acting still left in him.
I hope so.
This juice runs out.
I hope so. I hope it's not just like silly Tropic Thunder type stuff.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, but that's the thing is like, I don't know what Tom Cruise wants. I mean, he has said that he wants to basically keep making Mission Impossible movies until he dies, and I'm totally fine with that because as
coming year.
Well, that's what Keanu Reeves said in John Wick's Dead.
Yeah.
Well, right, but like the week after that, they announced John Wick 5. So I mean, that's the thing I love about Tom Cruise, and especially when it comes to this series. A lot of people say they make these movies for the fans, right? He really puts his money where his mouth is. These are big popcorn, blockbuster movies, but they're not dumb Transformers type movies where you go and you turn your brain off. They almost have the illusion, the patina of a smart spy thriller. They're smart-ish, right? You're not going to be sitting there watching it over and over again to try and pick up the nuances, but I think it does help that you've got Christopher McQuarrie as the co-writer who wrote. I was constantly reminded watching this movie, this is the guy who wrote The Usual Suspects.
Got an Oscar for it, didn't he?
Didn't he do Way of the Gun too?
Yes.
Okay. I don't think I saw The Way of the Gun. But these are movies that are made for, I think, smarter than popcorn audiences, but they're also thrilling. So anybody can, they're very accessible, but they're not like accessible sounds almost like an insult. Like, anybody
like
can watch
handicap
these.
ramp.
No.
But it's interesting, and you're onto something. And you just said something about it too, David. Is I'm not saying America's Slap, because we've all been paying attention and going to see these movies, but not only has I think this been the most consistent, or at least getting better with each kind of movie subsequently in many respects franchise, but I swear I think it's actually better than Bourne and Bond, because I think they actually come up with some very good mysteries and suspense here in that storyline. I think they've had good villains. I think they've had some interesting back and forth. They certainly do little things like I know you weren't a big Fallout fan, but I liked it. I mean, that scene where, they're left with that French policewoman who's about to arrest them.
Mm-hmm.
And they, Tom Cruise kind of like walk away, and then those other guys come up and shoot her. And I mean, you don't see anything like that anywhere in a Bond movie or any of that kind of stuff. And the fact that McQuarrie, I think, is a big enough fan of spy thrillers and knows that kind of collateral damage is part of it and adds intrigue to it. And it reminds us that this is such a dangerous business. I give him plaudits for doing that kind of stuff. I also have to say, there are many directors who tried to do a Bond movie and bombed. I mean, Mark Forster did Quantum of Solace, and it's the worst directed Bond movie of any of them.
I still kind of like it.
Oh, well, thank you, David. Let's not go down that rabbit hole. But McQuarrie's a great action director. You know, one of the things I realized about halfway through Dead Reckoning is like, I can follow everything that is happening here. It's not cut too fast. He doesn't change through lines. I don't know, where we are because scenes are rushing about. He really lets you see where these people are. And he certainly shows a lot of shots of Tom Cruise actually driving vehicles or, drowning in water and things like that. So, I mean, I think he's a very smart filmmaker who respects the spy genre and adds a lot to it that frankly those other guys aren't as much anymore.
Yeah, it's rare that you got a guy who's as good on paper with the script as he is with chops making the movie. I don't know the next closest person who is that, where writing and pedigree or writing and craft come together. It's probably Nolan, but he's just too big. Maybe it's Matt Reeves right now. There's not a lot of contemporaries that are in that class.
Well, I would say that, and I think those are close.
Yeah,
but what Cruise and McQuarrie, and I got to give props to the editor. I don't have their name right here, but I got to say, and I know we're jumping around and we haven't really talked about the plot of the film, but the train sequence, the Orient Express, the big, I don't know, it feels like it's the last hour of the movie, and that's not a criticism. It's a big kind of sprawling set piece where all the characters come together on the Orient Express. It's almost like they remade Murder on the Orient Express twice.
We'll make that bigger for you. Yeah.
Right. But what I loved is there's the big action set piece that, as you mentioned, Jeff, has been teased for months in trailers and previews of Tom Cruise jumping the bike off that mountain. And I was always like, okay, where's he going? But it's not a matter of the trailer spoiled it for me, because when I'm watching the film, I realize what he's trying to do by jumping off that is to jump onto a moving train.
Yeah.
And we see what's going on inside that train. It's Haley Atwell's character is doing, her name is Grace. She's doing a bit of kind of the disguise mask subterfuge to try and get find out who the broker is for this key that unlocks the AI that's buried at the bottom of the ocean, all that stuff. But they keep cutting back and forth to what's going on in the train, to Tom Cruise either jumping off the mountain or kind of like gliding through the air. And the cutting is so deft because you spend just enough time with those components that the big surprise where Haley Atwell's character, and this is spoiler territory again, folks, has a gun on her. Yeah. And you're like, oh my God, they're standing 1 foot away from each other. She's got a gun trained on her and a guy who's been ordered to shoot her. How is she going to get out of this mess? And then in comes Tom Cruise flying through the window, not in a heroic fashion, but as a comedy, like, oh my God, this just happened. And I just happened to knock the guy who was going to shoot you out of the other window. It's funny, and it's a great tension breaker. And it's also like, yes, this is why this guy kicks all the ass. And the other reason I think this movie is more successful than, say, Matt Reeves or what Christopher Nolan might do is, and it's something that I had a big complaint with Indy 5. Two very similar movies, not just because they have big fight scenes on trains, but you've got an older actor who's been with this franchise for a long time. But much like with Tom Cruise did with Maverick, these are kind of revered characters within their own story. That Ethan Hunt is optimistic. He has his dark moments, but that's just because like all of his friends are in danger and the world is coming to an end, and all that stuff. But he's never like, I don't know if I'm worthy enough to do this, and I'm going to be just kind of sad and let this new spunky young thing come along and drag me along the top of this train.
That's a good Harrison Ford.
Thank you.
That's not bad. Yeah.
That was my peppy Harrison Ford. But no.
Wow. Don't dial it too hard, Ian.
But I gotta say, the other great parallel is Haley Atwell's character in this movie and Phoebe Waller-Bridge's character in Dial of Destiny. Both are kind of duplicitous characters who are in it for themselves. The difference is Haley Atwell, she's a thief who gets hired to get part of this key, but she doesn't know who hired her, what she's involved in. She gets swept up in this big conspiracy, and she's not a fighter. She's not an ass kicker. When she gets into fights with various, assassins and stuff, you can tell whether it's the stunt person or actually Haley Atwell. They were told, okay, fight as if you were a regular person fighting someone who knows how to kill by, snapping their fingers pretty much. and it's just that it adds to that wonderful tension. It's a great contrast when Rebecca Ferguson's character shows up and fights the same person. You're like, okay, now you've got two skilled assassins going at it, and then the one that we're rooting for is going to have her ass handed to her. There's just, I feel like the way to boost Indiana Jones's failing box office is to somehow require that if you're going to watch Mission Impossible, you have to watch that first, so then you can see how it's done correctly.
That's a long 6 hours of the movie. So I mean,
look, you're talking about Barbenheimer.
Either.
Okay, we're living in an era of Barbenheimer. I don't think people can complain. But let me ask you this, because it came up briefly. The limited use of CGI. How the hell do people run on top of trains that are moving 70 miles an hour, 120 miles an hour? Because in Indiana Jones, I'm like, okay, this is all on a stage. I don't believe any of this. I believed what I was watching in Mission Impossible. Is it really that good? Or are they actually able to pull that stuff off? Because I was taken out of the movie because I'm like, these people look like they're actually in danger.
Well, they're there and they're doing it on a train. I think when you get to the tunnels that you have to duck under, that switches a little bit to CGI. But like, no, Asai Morales and Tom Cruise are fighting on top of a train.
I want to believe that it wasn't going as fast as it was.
Well, that's part of it. They've got rigs and things that are holding them in place, so they're never really in danger. It's not going that fast. But this is also where a skilled filmmaker comes in, because he knows how to pace the camera rate, the camera film speed, or the digital speed, whatever it is now, as well as how to edit it to hide any kind of thing that looks too rushed or false. Again, this is so expertly put together that all that stuff seems and plays real, and a lot of it is. I mean, the famous shot where Cruise breaks his ankle jumping to the other building in Fallout, they show that, and he's doing that jump. Now he's got
the
thing on it and stuff like that. But even when he bends his ankle over, he still finishes the shot by crawling over like in pain. But they could use that, and I guess that's what they actually used in the film. So, even if he's got all the safeguards and all that kind of stuff, he's still on that building, running around and jumping. So I think, to your point, Ian, it is believable, as opposed where, so much of Indiana Jones is, you can tell that they're putting Indiana Jones in this rickety little thing, and it's against, rear screen projection or green screen, because he can't really get out there and do that stuff at his age, even as an actor.
I think it's just old school practical filmmaking. Like, if you can do it live, it always looks better. But the nice part is they'll use the technology, like we've always complained about on this dais. Is like, don't make it the whole picture, just varnish, accent little spots where you need to dress it up. And for this, it's just removing wires. Everything else is like they got dudes on a train, they got dudes on a cliff, they're jumping motorcycles off cliffs, and like obviously there's like a GoPro camera mounted to the front of the motorcycle, but it's and even the ramp that we see in the production thing is all turned into greenery and stones. But I mean, like they have figured out, well, not figured out it, they knew it for a long time, but these are filmmakers who will paint with a fine brush instead of a broad brush when it comes to using effects, versus, like you said, with Indiana Jones, like, we can't even have real bugs and eels. It's too much of it. Like, the humans are secondary.
I think the eel actors were on strike.
That's quite possible. It was June. The writers were kind of into it. The actors were on their way. The eels are like, nope, done. Yep.
Yeah.
That's the slug aphid union.
Nice.
But
nice.
So thank you.
Yeah. Oh, and one name drop. Props to your editor is Eddie Hamilton. He's kind of Ben McQuarrie's guy for a while. He used to do Matthew Vaughn movies, so like Kick-Ass, X-Men First Class, the Kingsman stuff. So it's that, and he of course just did Maverick. 3 years ago / 2 years ago, whatever. They finally finished the movie. But yeah, so that's an action editor for sure.
I wonder if Cruise said to like Kaczynski and McQuarrie, they're like, all right, look, I need to be king of the summer for the next 3 summers. And what is it going to be? Because like, I mean, what is it? I mean, I don't know what it is about this summer. We have like 3 cliffhangers. We got Fast 10. I call it Fast X.
Sure.
What's the other cliffhanger? The
Spider-Verse.
Spider-Verse.
Yeah.
Okay, Spider-Verse.
I thought it was the Oppenheimer.
And this. Yeah, well. Yeah, more. Yeah.
But it's also interesting. Let me just defend that for a second here. Again, like I said, they kind of do everything right. This film is self-contained. It has an ending. It is
Yeah.
self-contained. Go look
It
at it
is.
again. The bad
It is,
guy
it is, it is.
loses. They keep
Yeah.
the key. He wins the thing.
Yeah.
It is a satisfying set piece. Now you can say to yourself, "Oh, because I'm familiar with these movies and I know there's a second one coming, they can
Yeah.
easily do it." I mean, they brought back the same villain from Ghost Protocol
Mhm.
for Fallout.
That's
So,
true.
you know, and Rebecca Ferguson has been in 3 of these now. But I thought, oh shit, this film's going to end with a TBD, you know, or to be continued,
Mhm.
whatever thing. And it really doesn't. It's
You're
kind of
right,
its
it
own
does, yeah.
satisfactory adventure versus those other, which like, shoot, I really want the rest of that now. It's like, I'm curious to see, because I think they're going to go in a little bit different place with some of the stuff in Dead Reckoning and
Well-
not have it immediately pick up here
Yeah.
and be kind of disappointing.
Well, it's kind of got that John Wick thing from whichever sequel it was. I think it was 2 to 3, where like all of a sudden the entire world is going to be looking for him.
Yeah.
That's what's going to be coming down in
Mhm.
the IMF. I do like Isai Morales. I don't know if it's a deliberate callback to La Bamba, but his last line in that movie and in this movie is screaming out someone's name.
That's
87
right.
was like, Ricky! And this one
Mhm.
was Ethan!
I thought he
He's
was a very formidable villain here, and I also have to say, props for them bringing back Henry Czerny back.
Yeah.
He is
fantastic.
fantastic.
Yeah.
The way he just
Haven't
takes
seen him since Boogeyman.
ever to read his lines
Yeah.
is
Do you
so
think-
irritating. I love that.
Do you think Hugo Weaving was copying off of him for Mr.
Hell
Sydney?
yes.
And,
Hell
I hope
yeah.
so. Yeah.
Well, I don't even think he had that much of a menacing presence in the first one. You know,
Well,
I
but
think
you
it
didn't
really
know where he
amped-
was
Still the
good or
good
bad.
guy.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think it really kind of amped it up in this one, which is great.
Yeah.
But I mean, in the first one, if you remember, before
The restaurant scene.
the restaurant scene where he goes like, okay, enough of this, Ethan. You're
Yeah.
the only person left here. You're, you know, so he's kind of like,
Mhm.
well, and they do that very well here. I mean, Angela Bassett was a little bit pissy in Fallout. Alec Baldwin was pissy in the one
Right.
before that, before he came the good guy. I like the fact that these bosses are always a little bit. I mean, even Lawrence Fishburne in the one in 3 with
Hopkins.
you know, and stuff like that. So they're always a little bit like, you know, he always goes rogue, and I don't like that.
Yeah. Curt. They're always very curt.
Yeah, I mean, it was nice to see him come back, especially where you've got Shea Wiggum and the other. Oh my God, I don't know who that actor was, but he played his
I'll
name.
look
His
it up
character's
real
name
quick.
was Degas. But
Yeah.
they're these kind of there's these kind of like weird quasi government operatives who are
Uh-huh.
working for Kittrick. But then they always kind of seem to be a few steps behind the IMF, except, you know, in a
Yes.
couple
They were
instances.
kind of the comic relief in a way, almost, weren't they? Like
Right,
they
but
just
they're
weren't
also-
very effective in anything.
Well,
But
because of
there's
Shea
also-
Wiggum, you know, it helps. You know, he's
Yeah,
just a red
right.
ass.
Who-
So
Yeah.
Who's got some amazing hair, by the way.
Oh.
But at the end, when everybody's on that train and the movie kind of pauses for a second when these two operatives are at the bar, and the younger one is like, I don't know if we should be like, why are we helping to get this key? Like, and the
Right.
guy's like, what would you do with that power? He's like, I wouldn't give it. I'd probably destroy it. Like, nobody should have that power. And it's this level of nuance that you don't usually get in these kind of
That's
like
right.
government operative hired guns. And I like that these characters are still around, that we're going to see them, you know, in a sequel. You know, you're right, Jeff. It is pretty self-contained, but I do like that there's, you know, they don't do the whole like extending this movie by another hour, because we as the
Mhm.
audience know what everybody in the film is trying to get to, but nobody
Yeah.
in the movie knows.
There's
All they
huge
know is they
dramatic
have to
irony
get
in that
these.
opening scene. Yeah.
Right, but they
Mhm.
have these two halves of a key, this cruciform gold key that unlocks this AI vault of, you know, it's like the home base of the master computer that's now in the bottom, a Russian submarine at the bottom of the ocean, which, by the way, considering what happened a
Oh,
month
we're going
ago,
there.
opening up your movie with, you know, this experimental submersible going like
Mhm.
getting blown up and sinking.
Uh-huh.
It's like,
Yeah.
okay. But
They didn't know.
Ripped from today's headlines.
Yeah.
yes,
They hit the Law and Order bell.
Well, I mean, so is the
Either that
AI.
either
So is
that
the
or-
AI.
well, that's true.
Yeah.
But if you want to get really dark about it, you could think about back to a month ago. Maybe Cruise was just doing some really early publicity. But
He traveled
anyhow,
through time.
You know, Ian, you touched on something how we as viewers and the audience were always kind of one step ahead of everybody in the movie. And I didn't really care for that. I mean,
I didn't. I'm with
You
you.
know-
I didn't care for that when I knew Henry Cavill was the bad guy a movie ago. I think
I-
I'd rather be
here-
spun.
well,
Yeah.
I understand what you're saying, David. I liked it in this case, and it's not something I fully appreciated until the movie was over, because in the traditional Hollywood blockbuster, when the audience is way ahead of the characters in the movie, that's usually a bad sign. But in this case, what it means is you still have the mystery of this submerged AI in the vault. What I was starting to say initially was, I'm glad they didn't extend this movie an hour. So the big climax is now all of a sudden they're in wetsuits or stealing a submarine to go get the thing, and they shut it all down. That AI is still down there doing its thing somehow, transmitting or I guess like wired in through satellites or whatever.
Great Wi-Fi and a sub,
right. But that is what is going to be ostensibly the setup for the next movie, because it's still this menacing threat. And the people who have the key now, I think they have an idea. I only saw the movie once, even though it was yesterday, but I think they have an idea of where this is or what happened to the hub. It's now at the bottom of the ocean somewhere, but now it's like, okay, the world is coming after them. How do they get down there without, you know, with the limited resources of them truly being on the run? So I liked that. Again, at the end, because I realized, oh, they're not going to just tie all this up in a neat bow. I actually have to wait. It's a genuine cliffhanger for next year whenever the second part comes out. I mean, I feel you. Not everyone is going to feel that way, but
if that's the only thing that you're really ahead of the game on here, that's okay. It's like Hitchcock putting the bomb underneath the dinner table. We know it's there, and the people in the scene don't.
Sure,
it adds some to us. But I mean, the rest of it here, I think, is so. Like, you don't know where things are going from. I mean, they introduced the Vanessa Kirby's character comes back, and she's basically back as a comic foil this time. I didn't expect that from her, because I thought she might be, very serious or a bad person, and she's basically there to be Haley Atwell, foil and kind of a drunk,
but we've got
sleepy woman, which was funny as hell.
But we've got Henry, and then we've got Carrie Elways, and we kind of know too much too, a little bit, just a little bit.
And that's a whole lot of exposition too. That whole scene with the U.S. the Intelligence Committee, it's all kind of an excuse for to use disguise and infiltration and everything. It has some nice Dutch angles, and it's filmed nice, and it reminds me of how De Palma approached it, but there's a lot of kind of chunky clunky expositions, especially on Carrie Elway's character. It's like, okay, this guy's just clearly playing catch up, and it's almost like for gateway viewers who haven't seen the last three movies.
Well, it's also, I think it's a bit of that, but it's also to set up what this entity, what this AI is, and what it could do if it got into the wrong hands. Because this is not a everyday walking around Joe point of view movie. It's not like we see it taking over supermarkets, or stock markets, or like the end of Terminator 3, where it's like, turning all the government missiles on people and them running away. It's very much like, this is the world of, super top secret spy stuff. So only a handful of people are going to know what it is. So for the audience, I think it's important to understand what it is they're up against. Otherwise, like, okay, it's a rogue computer. What does that mean? Really, they really go into not only like launching weapons, but it's about disinformation and changing the truth. And we get some great illustrations of that wonderful airport sequence where Shea Wiggum and those government ops are trying to find Tom Cruise, and they've got facial recognition. They're following people around because, okay, I'm looking at it's 100% match, but the AI had interfered and pasted his face on like other people's bodies. It reminded me of that the bowler hat scene from Thomas Crown Affair almost.
Which is a great scene,
right.
But this was a clever way of doing like the Mission Impossible mask. Is like, let AI make you one.
I would also argue that it's actually doing something that most spy movies do not do, and that is that's espionage. Following people, monitoring them, that kind of stuff is as dangerous in some respects as just aiming guns at people or jumping off of airplanes and such like that. I mean, I think that all keeps the spy world moving, because a lot of it is handoffs and following people and trying to track what's going on and narrow escapes. I find all that very pleasing here, because it's great action. They let it breathe with some of that kind of stuff, as well as the comedy and some of the other character stuff, which this movie franchise has always done well too. I mean, going back to the original Mission Impossible, I think some of the stuff where Tom Cruise is just bantering it about with Vanessa Redgrave was good, and or Henry Czerny in that scene, and Alec Baldwin in the last one, and some of those kind of things. I mean, what I liked about Fallout a lot was that you had a very good foil in the room with him, with Henry Cavill. That this guy who's also, you know, tough and good and quippy and everything else. And so he's not only sure if he can trust him, but damn it, he can keep up with my banter too. I think that stuck to me as much fun as the action in something like this.
Yeah, I agree. I think the character stuff is really strong. You know, talking about Simon Pegg's Benji character, in the airport he discovers a bomb, which it's a nuclear device, and he's got it's a series of different kinds of puzzles, which was
Right.
kind of fun. But it struck it they were a psychological test. And you see him getting kind of emotional because, like, what's the most important thing in the world to you? And he said, my friends. And you realize that
family.
he's got, wait, right. Well, hey, he didn't say family. He said friends, which is the dotted line to family in this. I'm so glad he didn't say that.
He didn't crack open a Corona, but he was close. Okay, airport
But
bar, two doors down.
But you pretty much know. Okay, I think if it hadn't been a nuclear device, there might have been some tension. Like maybe Benji's going to blow up. Like that section of the airport's going to go. But you're talking a nuclear device. Like Tom Cruise is in the same airport. They're not going to do it. But in that moment, Simon Pegg was so good that you see him getting just worked up enough. They're like, he thinks he's going to die, but you're also getting a window into how much being a part of this team means to him. And that comes in later when Haley Atwell's Grace character is being propositioned to take on the disguise role, to go onto a train that the whole plan is for her to go to the train with these killers, hopefully get captured, hopefully get brought to the IMF director, who hopefully that he can be trusted and maybe get a job with this impossible mission force. But she's like, why would I give up my life of being a thief to, fall in with you people? And, Ving Rhames, Simon Pegg, Tom Cruise, they're all really good in this kind of quiet scene of trying to show her that there is value in this kind of found family. Again, not many movies of this kind pull over to establish these are characters. They're not just, props to get you from one beat to another.
Right.
So David, it sounds like, are you kind of like soft on this one? You weren't like totally jazzed by Fallout? Dead Reckoning.
I think it's my least favorite McQuarrie
Mine
film.
too.
Yeah,
Mine too.
But I absolutely had a blast. I like the visuals. I like the action sequences. I like most of the performances. I just felt like the script, it just felt really obvious for me. And I just felt like, oh wow, we got these two pieces of the keys, and it's like a Horcrux or whatever. It's like, okay, we got to go here, we got to go there, and that there's always MacGuffins. I know, but this feels like the most MacGuffin-y MacGuffins that I've seen.
There's like three, because it's the two pieces of the key, and then the damn AI sunken in the bottom of the ocean. We're like, oh boy, there's a lot of MacGuffins.
And I don't even mind that. Like I feel like Rogue Nation to me had a lot more visual flair and almost like more urgency, and style, like visual style, and just Fallout was just this like hard as nails, just coming at you. This one, I feel like it's trying to go back to maybe like somewhat of what De Palma was doing with just really building up suspicions and paranoia, and that's cool and everything, but I just feel like when it came down to it, I didn't feel really nerve-wracked by a lot of the action sequences, where I have before in the past. Like, oh man, how's this gonna and it didn't help that the way this movie was marketed is, we saw the whole big motorcycle thing, 8 months ago. And
well, they've done that with some of the others. I mean, I don't remember the last one before, but it's like he's on the side of the plane when it's taking off, and
we knew the Khalifa.
But the plane thing in Fallout was in the beginning of the movie. Like, we know in this movie that at some point, later on in the film, there's no like we don't think that Tom Cruise is Ethan Hunt is not going to make it.
Well, like, imagine if that motorcycle stunt was a complete surprise. We'd be like, holy shit.
Right. Yes. I mean, it's even on the poster. It's like, come on, man.
Well, I think unfortunately, we're in that weird position of I can't blame the filmmakers on that, because they don't necessarily know or have control how it's going to be marketed. I mean, they probably have an idea this is the big centerpiece, but I can't fault the film itself for something the commercials ruined.
I mean, after all that, I would have, if I was Hunt, I would have said, Benji, I love you, but you need a break, because why do I have to go all over mountains and terrains to fly off a cliff and go on to parachute on top of a train, and you're sitting there as my guy on a desk, guy in a chair?
Well,
no.
How else is he going to catch that train, though?
You need a break. There's got to be some other way. I mean, I don't know. I mean, and that's that's the whole. I'm trying to be a little too realistic with this, but like Jeff said, I think that the better action sequence and the more immersive action sequence, where you're more invested, is what happens on the train later.
Yeah,
especially once Hunt reunites with Grace, because we are already, if you haven't watched any of these movies in a while, Grace is our gateway character, right? Right. Mm-hmm. So we feel like, in those scenes, especially during the whole Buster Keaton thing, where the train cars are falling and it's all vertical. I guess that's maybe the only part in the movie where I felt like kind of, white knuckled, because I know that Hunt can survive this, but can she? And we know that a lot of women in Ethan Hunt's life have, and so, wow, she could die, but then again, they're just introducing her, and hopefully she'll be in the next one. But
she's definitely coming back for the second one. I was not so concerned with her making out of the movie, because I felt like they were setting her up to be like she's the new recruit and she can be important later. My question is, and we got to go in just a few minutes here, but I think it was David, you had said these movies are infinitely rewatchable. I have not. I've gone back and watched parts of the first one, but I've never rewatched any of these movies.
Ooh, I do. Yeah, when they're on,
the second movie I've not seen in its final form, because I saw an early cut of it. I probably told this story before, but it was a surprise screening with Tom Cruise and John Woo. And I spent about an hour of that movie trying to stifle my laughter, because I was sitting behind not Tom Cruise, John Woo, and I was like, oh, I can't do this. But my point is, Esai Morales' character, he's new to this story, isn't he? Okay.
Yes, very much so.
They keep showing these flashbacks to
but not
scene,
to movies we know. Yeah.
Right, but it's like he had a girl, Tom Cruise had a girlfriend or a wife.
I don't know.
And Esai, he was like behind a gate and he saw Esai Morales shoot her. He like gave a knowing look and then shot her. As like
they might have to explain a little bit more of that in the next one, because the whole idea too that these people were recruited because they were criminals was new here as well.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah, they were all given the choice, right? So that was my question. I didn't know if that was a reference to something I had just forgotten. But on top of that, there's a scene where, and I don't remember, I think it's towards the end, but Ethan Hunt flashes back to that woman in the alley, flashes back to Rebecca Ferguson's character, and I think flashes back to meeting Haley Atwell's character. They don't like mention his wife or like
they made
I'm thinking about all the women of the women I've loved in my life, but like she didn't, like Michelle Monaghan wasn't there, or even Kerry Russell for that matter. Like, come on.
The fact she showed up, of course, in Fallout, which I didn't see coming whatsoever, where that was a hell of a nice swerve, where if that, and they've, like you said, they've kind of interconnected these since Abrams showed up as a producer and McQuarrie took over as director, where I kind of was waiting around for Monaghan somewhere. Now we got one more movie. Who knows? But
it would have been awesome if this movie opened up with all of these former women in his life, like coming after him.
Yes,
and it's just an opening scene where at the end he wakes up, and so it's all he's haunted by all these women coming after him, and he's
Kittredge is running the support group for Ethan Hunt's women.
No, it's Ethan's Angels. There you go.
That'd be good.
Did you guys see the funny? I don't know if I shared this on our thread, but the funny Mission in Hospital.
No,
you gotta check it out. Mission in Hospital, and it's all the trailer from Dead Reckoning, but Tom Cruise keeps on getting more and more injured as the trailer goes on. And,
all
right. I at his age and as Ethan Hunt playing his age, I would like to see him a lot more banged up. Like there's just no way.
Yeah, I agree. Like
he was banged up pretty good at the end of Fallout.
True.
Yeah, he took some hits in that one. Thank goodness. But
But
I want to see like
Actually, Ian,
bad
I
hip
suggest you
and
watch
knee
Fallout again.
replacement. You know,
That fight on the
Maybe watch
on
them all
the-
again, but Fallout would be worth watching it because I think you'll like it better.
I have to watch Rogue Nation and then Fallout again because of that
yeah,
connective tissue. But
you don't need that.
I'll find time. I gotta watch Barbie and Oppenheimer coming up. But all right, guys, I gotta go. Unfortunately, I know I gotta cut this short. I got other
Hey,
stuff.
David,
going
if
on.
you came on time, you'd actually be here for 10 more minutes.
Oh no shade, no
that
shade.
that was impossible to do.
Apparently it's part of a franchise.
That's right.
Oh wow. All right, so nothing
You'll
but
be on
love
time
and hugs,
next time,
guys.
David.
Or a
All right.
series.
So, all right. We are gonna go. Thank you guys for hanging out and talking about Dead Reckoning Part 1. I'm sure next year we'll be talking about, or whenever it actually comes out, Dead Reckoning Part 2. I'm excited. I think Jeff, you made this point early on. How many franchises can go this long and this strong? And I think we really have something special here. So yeah, folks, if you don't want to watch the world blow up and you've had your fill of Barbie dolls, go watch Mission Impossible in the theater. It's still out there. It's just weird to say in week 2. People remember this movie that came out 6 days ago. But anyway, thanks everybody for hanging out. I'm Ian Simmons of Kicking the Seat. We have Jeff York of The Establishing Shot, Don Shanahan of Film Obsessive and Everything Else, David Fowley of Keeping It Real. All of their information is down below. Please like and subscribe to their content and to this channel if you enjoy what you saw. What did you think of Mission Impossible 7? Did you like it? Did you love it? Were you like, did you hate it? Leave us a comment down below and we'll talk about those in a future show. Next week, we'll be back at the same time talking about Oppenheimer. And then the week after that, we'll be talking about Barbie. And then the week after that, we're going to be talking about Ninja Turtles. So we're going to be closing out the summer. We're just going muscling on through. So until next time, which is next Wednesday, and yeah, I'm going to let everybody go. My mission, should I choose to accept it, is to stop rambling. So thanks, everybody. Take care and good night.
Good night.